From being brutally tortured in the Capitol to her constantly shifting loyalties, there were a few dark secrets about Effie Trinket that never made their way to the Hunger Games films, starting with who she really was. In The Hunger Games, a series of dystopian young adult books by Suzanne Collins, the characters live in a country called Panem. Panem was made after a terrible war. Each of the 12 districts is controlled by the capital, and as an act of respect and submission to the capital, each district sends one boy and one girl to fight to the death in the Hunger Games every year. Yeah, pretty dystopian if you ask me. Effie Trinket lives in the wealthy capital, and every year during the reaping, it is her job to draw the names of the District 12 tributes. After the tributes have been chosen, Effie acts as a sort of publicist and advisor. She is in charge of presenting the tributes, and if one of them wins the Hunger Games, she will be very proud in the capital. Effie is known for her crazy clothes, which are in style in the capital. But her life isn't all shiny, glittery clothes and bold makeup. Hidden, dark secrets about Effie. In the movies, Effie's role in the war between the capital and the districts was changed, and some of the darkest details about her were left out. Effie always seemed to be a well-meaning but slightly dim-witted member of Katniss Everdeen's Capitol crew, but her role in the Girl on Fire story changes from book to movie. In the movie, it was clear who Effie was loyal to and what her morals were, but in the book by Suzanne Collins, she was rather a bit more of a question mark. Katniss had seen Effie Trinket come to District 13 and take children to enter the Hunger Games for years, but she didn't get to know the woman till it was her turn to go to the Capitol. The Hunger Games movies show that Effie doesn't care much about what the tributes are going through, which initially made her seem awful. But as time went on, Katniss started to like her more and more. In the movie Hunger Games: Mockingjay Part 1, Effie Trinket decided to join the rebels in District 13 and assisted Katniss to stand up to the Capitol. In the Hunger Games books, though, the Capitol escort's wartime experience was much darker. Remember in the movies, she comes to District 13 and meets Katniss? Well, that didn't happen in the books. In the Hunger Games: Mockingjay Part 1, when Effie Trinket was moved to District 13 to continue being Katniss's guardian, it was clear that she didn't belong there. Still, she didn't mind not having makeup, wigs, or going to big parties because she wanted to help the girl she had grown to love. It was really sweet if you ask me. It just made Effie so much more human. In the Hunger Games books, however, Katniss didn't find out what really happened to Effie since her second games until a long time later. In the book Catching Fire, Katniss said goodbye to Effie Trinket, who was crying just before going into the arena for the Quarter Quell. She didn't see her again until the final book when they were getting ready to kill President Snow. Katniss was happy to see her old escort because she had heard that Effie had been taken prisoner by the Capitol during the war. Then, Plutarch Heavensbee had to work hard to persuade Coin that she had been on the rebel side. Katniss thought this was funny because she thought it was crazy that Effie would join District 13. This was nothing like what happened in the movies. That was just one of the cool details that were changed, though. Effie did not have it easy at all. Hard to believe, right? It didn't seem like that in the movies, but in the books, she went through hell. In fact, she was tortured by the Capitol. In the Hunger Games books, Katniss was sure that Effie Trinket wouldn't have joined the rebels. However, it scared her to ponder what the Capitol could have done to her after the arena broke out. Katniss saw something different in Effie's eyes, even though she seemed like her usual bubbly self before what was meant to be President Snow's death. She said they were blank and disconnected, which was a sign that Effie wasn't getting the luxurious care she was used to getting in the Capitol. At the end of the Hunger Games books, it was said that Effie was one of the last escorts from the games who was still alive. Her friends, as well as the Hunger Games fashion designers and mentors, had been killed, either by the Capitol because they were suspected of treason or by President Coin's new government. Because of Plutarch, Effie didn't die. die. But from what Katniss said about Effie during their short time together at the Capitol, it seems likely that she was tormented by one side or the other. Still, it was never clear what role she played or who she was loyal to. That sounds horrible and extremely sad, given how she's always in a cheerful and jolly mood. There's no denying that she was one of the most mysterious characters in the series. One could never tell what she was up to, rebel or royalist. Even though the Capitol made Effie quite the angry character in the movies, this wasn't the situation in the books. When Katniss encountered Effie, she had been loyal to President Snow and the Panem authorities. And of course, Katniss really didn't like her at first. But over time, she began to like Effie more and more, and so did the audience. Still, the escort really cared about Katniss's life. Before the games, she did everything she could to help her out, but she never said anything bad about the capital of Panem. That's why it was a little hard for me to think about Effie as a rebel, personally. Katniss, too, hadn't ever questioned her escort, whose side she was really on. She didn't want to know, and there was never a safe time to tell her. She often had trouble deciding how she felt about a few Capitol citizens she liked. Because of how they were raised, it didn't seem fair to keep blaming them for how they acted. Still, it's plausible that Effie was going to root for the rebels, but was too wise to say so. This could also be why she didn't think twice about switching her loyalty to President Coin. Effie just knew how to stay alive in the Hunger Games, just like everyone else. She did seem like a tough cookie, and she was good at hiding her true self. However, I'm still sad she didn't get a proper ending. After the second rebellion, the Hunger Games books didn't say much about Effie's future, unlike what they said about Katniss, Peeta, and Haymitch. Before she said goodbye to Haymitch, she gave him a kiss, which many fans hoped would lead to something more in the real world. Even though it wasn't clear whether or not they would end up together, it would have made sense for Effie to go to District 12 sometimes to see her friends. But while Effie went back to the Capitol, she couldn't really go back to the life she had before. Since the Hunger Games were stopped and Panem's future was no longer the same, Effie would have to find a new job. She could have joined the new government in the Capitol, or she could have helped the refugees during the country's transition. One thing's for sure, though. I can imagine that the popular Hunger Games character was definitely showing off her unique sense of style wherever she ended up. That's all for the dark details from the Hunger Games books about Effie Trinket.